Hey, I'm Hunter from SkillThrive, and in this video, we're going to take this navigation bar, we're going to make sure that it sticks to the top of the page when a user scrolls, and we're also going to add this shadow. That way it just separates itself from the rest of the user interface. Now, before we get started, I'm using Tailwind UI's free preview components in order to build this demo page. Now, this is by no means sponsored by Tailwind UI, but I figured I might as well mention it just because if it's something you're interested in, you can check that out. Now, it might go without mentioning, but because I'm using Tailwind UI, I am using Tailwind CSS, which is a utility-first CSS library. Now, if you haven't heard of that, be sure to check out the links in the description. I also have a link on how to get Tailwind and Next.js set up together, which is what I'm using for this project. Now, because I'm using Tailwind UI, there's also a couple of different things that you don't have to use, but just makes it your life a lot easier if you're using Tailwind UI. One is the Headless UI React components. Now, these are components which I wish existed, natively in the browsers, but they don't. And this library just makes it easier to work with things like menus and list boxes, and it makes them responsive. It handles the state. It does all of that for you, and it doesn't do any of the styling. So you can pass all your own styling over to get whatever styles you want. Now, this isn't, you don't have to use Tailwind CSS to use this. You can use any styles, but just, again, something I wanted to mention before we get started. And the icons, again, are coming from the folks at Tailwind CSS, which are the hero icons. Again, you don't need Tailwind CSS to use these. These are just free open source icons for you to use. Okay, so now that we have an idea of everything that we're using for this, let's go into the code here. And the first thing we need to do is I need to stop the server. Now, if I do git branch, you can see all the different branches that we have here. And I have the main branch, which is the finished project, the start here branch, which is the one you should switch to. So go git checkout and then start here. Or in this case, I'm actually going to switch to the video tutorial, which is just a duplicate of the start here branch. So it's going to be with everything not added. So do npm run dev just to get an idea of what we're working with. Okay, so here you can see the navigation bar doesn't stick to the top and just kind of goes away when we scroll. Well, that's not a great user experience, right? We want it to at least stick to the top. So what we need to do is we need to head into the nav component here. We'll come down to this popover component, which is actually a component from Headless UI. And this is really cool because this component, just really quick, gives you all these really cool functionalities like this, these cool little popover menus and stuff. But we have this popover component, and we need to go ahead and make it sticky. In Tailwind, it's really easy. We just say sticky top -0. And we need to get rid of this relative. And now if we refresh this, you can see now with just 2 class names, we already have a sticky navigation. Now, you might be okay with just this, but I don't like this because it's hard to see how this is separated from the rest of the UI because the rest of the UI is heavily white as well. So now what we can do is we can add a shadow to this. And again, this is really easy. In Tailwind, we just say shadow. Now, if we come back into our project here, you can see now that we always have this shadow underneath the nav. And again, things might be great in this case if you like that, but I want to go an extra step here and only show the shadow once the user starts to actually scroll. So to do this, we have to create a custom hook. Now this hook is all it's going to do is track the scroll position. And if that scroll position is greater than 0, we know that we need to go ahead and add that, change the class name to this shadow one. So what we can do is we can go ahead and create a new hook here, or actually I already have the hook created, and I'm just going to walk through how it's created. So we have this function called useScrollPosition, and it's using useState from React to hold the position here of this page scroll. Then we have a useEffect hook inside of this custom hook, which has this function called updatePosition. And what it does is it sets the state here, which is tracked in this useState hook, by just calling the window page Y offset. So this is just out of the box JavaScript window object, which comes, you're able to access with just JavaScript. So it takes this value, sets it in state, and then we can read off that state because we're returning it down here. So the last thing this does is it has this function. It then adds an event listener, meaning anytime a person scrolls, we have this event listener waiting for that event to happen. And when this happens, it calls this update position, and then we know we can actually store that value. Now, another thing we need to do, because we added this event listener in the use effect, is we need to clean this up. So what this means is that we remove that event listener from the window. That way it's no longer listening to it because the component unmounts. So to do this, we have this function which comes again out of the box with JavaScript called remove event listener. This again is going to be the scroll event, and it's going to be the function of update position. All right, so that's really everything in order to get that position captured into a state, and then we can use it wherever we want in our project. So let's go ahead now and go back to the nav and bring in that new custom hook. So we'll say import useScrollPosition, and that's coming from our hooks folder. So down here, in order to get access to this, we just create a new constant called scroll position, or whatever you want to call it, equals, and then we call that function like this. So let's go ahead and just console.log the scroll position. So now if we go back into our project here, into the console, you should see it logging to the console. So you can see it's 0, and as soon as we scroll, we get all of these state updates. And if we go back, it's back to 0. So now we can use that value in order to change the class name of this navigation bar. Now, if you might have already noticed that we have this function at the top called class names, and I just got this from Tailwind UI. And all this does is you chain on all the different classes you want, and you can also pass in a Boolean to check, for example, is this value scroll position greater than 0? If it is, use this class name. If it's not, use this other class name, and that's just a ternary operator. And then you can chain on as many of these things, or many of these values you can pass in are just chained on using this join method, and then they're separated by a space here. So let's go actually walk through and show you what that looks like. And what we want to do is we want to add this to this popover class. So I'm just going to get rid of this right here and paste it at the top so we have it. And then we say class name equals class names, which is the name of the function. And here is where we can pass in all of the values. And what we want to say, is scroll position greater than 0? If it is, we want to say, hey, use the shadow class, which comes from Tailwind CSS. And if it's not, use the class called shadow none. Now again, what we can do is go ahead and chain on additional ternary operators, or in this case, we're just going to pass in the styles that no matter what this scroll position is, it's going to have the style. So the shared styles, I guess, is how you can think about this. So the first one we're going to add is transition shadow. What this does is make sure that on the shadow properties, the ones that change, instead of this happening instantly, there's this nice, gradual change instead of it being so fast. Just so it looks a little nicer. So then what we want to do is we want to actually take these values here. Let's go ahead and paste them, and then make sure we get rid of that shadow right here, because remember, we're using that up here in the ternary operator. Then we have to fix this. And there we go. So if we save that, you can see here that this class name is taking 2 arguments. It's taking this ternary operator, which is either going to return true or false. And then it's going to just take this string. And then this function is going to take all of those strings and just combine them into a larger string, which is going to be our final class name. So let's go ahead and get rid of this because this is not correct. Okay, so now if we save this, everything should be good to go. We should be set up. So let's make sure, cross our fingers and make sure our code works. So as we scroll, you'll see now not only is it sticking to the top, but we're getting this nice shadow on our navigation bar, which just separates it from the rest of the UI. And if we scroll to the top, it goes away. And there you have it. In just a couple lines of code with a really simple custom React hook, we're able to track the user's scroll position. So anytime they pass 0 pixels, so anytime they start to scroll, we add a really nice shadow to the navigation bar, which just separates it from the rest of the UI. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and be sure to check out our other videos on our YouTube channel and our written lessons and guides on skillthrive.com. Again, I'm Hunter from SkillThrive, and I'll see you in the next one.